Hi everybody, it is Benjamin Krudwig, and this is the return of the Design Time podcast. It has been well over a year since I have posted the last episode of this podcast. I can't even remember which episode number that is. However, I figured after a long hiatus that it was time to bring it back. So, what am I doing right now? This episode is going to be less of a normal podcast and more of a, hey, this is what I've been up to for the last year? So, thank you all for sticking around as long as you have. If you are coming back to this, thank you so much for having faith in me for coming back. And if you are new to this channel and new to this podcast, thank you for showing up. And if you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe. And now that YouTube has changed their algorithm yet again, if you could also hit the little notification bell next to the subscribe button, that would be fantastic. So, since you have seen me last, I no longer work for Stitchcraft Marketing, which is fine. It was an amicable departure, and I have started working again at Shack Spindle Company. I'm doing a lot of what I used to be doing. I'm the content manager there, so that means that I am in charge of most of the marketing program, as well as parts of the advertising program, and I've been dabbling more into the sales side of things yet again. So if you ever call Shack Spindle Company, you might hear me on the other end of the phone. I write many of the blogs and I lay out the newsletter, and I also work with talking to collaborators as well as yarn companies to get content onto our website. And it's been great to be back. So I've been back for over a year, just over a year now. I started back in October of last year. Um, so that's the big thing as far as working goes. And I have been designing, so on the design front, that's the Design Time podcast, you think I talk about design. I have been designing knitting patterns almost exclusively right now for Knitty. More specifically, their article or their section called Knitty Spin. So I've been spinning yarn and then designing knit patterns that go with that yarn. I have two two up right now, and I'll have a third up at the end of this year, and then a final fourth one up in springtime of 2019. I have not been doing a lot of designing for myself as far as self-publishing goes, because I've been spending a lot of that time doing fashion design. So a lot of you probably, if you follow me on Instagram, would know that I have been working on fashion design, and I now have two Instagrams that you can check out. I have Benjamin_Krudwig, which is my, my yarn stuff. That's where I post my knitting, my crochet, my spinning, and my weaving work. And then I have Benjamin_Collin, and that's spelled Collyn, and that is my fashion account. So that's where I post all of my new designs that I'm working on, and basically my explorations of fashion design. So what's going to happen with this channel now that so much has changed, I'm going to talk about everything design. So whether it's knitting, crochet, weaving, fashion, and sewing, or if it's color theory, the more basics of design, I'm going to talk about that here. So this channel is not going to only be a podcast, but I'm also going to be putting out more content that's educational, much like what I used to do when I started this YouTube channel 8 years ago in 2010. So you'll see a lot more of me talking about color theory and design theory, all of that great work. In particular, how it correlates and coordinates with the fiber arts. So I'll talk about color in relation to knitting and weaving and spinning and crochet and fashion. So please stick around for all of that. What you can see behind me right now is a very messy studio. I need to clean it like nobody's business. However, you'll see I have my loom behind me. Geez, I am so turned around right now. So I'm currently working on a whole bunch of scarves that I'll be selling this upcoming week, In particular, during the Small Business Saturday, which is November 24th, I'll have at least 4 available to sell, and those will be able to ship by Christmas. So if you do want to snag them, they'll be in my Etsy store by the 24th of November, probably early next week. Also, to my left, this is a dress that I'm working on right now. This is the muslin that I've set up. It's a asymmetrical single sleeve gown with quite a bit of draping. So I am really, really thrilled about how this is turning out. I need to get some black satin or some charcoal gray satin to finish it. This is the first piece of a 10-piece collection that I am working on right now. I would show you the other pieces, but they are sketches on my wall. So this collection, I know I'm kind of going all over the place, but you're going to have to bear with me on this first iteration of the podcast again. So this collection is all about my Inktober sketches. So if you don't know what that means, Inktober is something that happens, it's an event in the art world that happens every October, and it's a set of 31 prompts that are meant to get you sketching and get you doing art. So I participated this year all 31 days, and I took a focus not only on the prompts, but also on fashion. So the first week and a half, I actually used, there was also a Fashion-tober, and I mixed the prompts together, and then after about a week and a half, I was realizing I was not resonating with the Fashion-tober prompts as much as I was the Inktober prompts. So I decided to just do Inktober and focus solely on those prompts and how I would interpret them in fashion. So I have a few sketches here. So this prompt was muddy, and I took inspiration from a lotus flower, which, you know, it grows in the mud, and it grows up out of the water, and you get this beautiful, beautiful lotus blossom. You can obviously see when I flip it up this way, it looks like a lotus flower. I took a little bit more of a literal approach with this one. This one is breakable. This was a lot like my other menswear that I've designed, especially the Branches tee. However, this one, it looks like shattered glass, so breakable. Let's see, I'm trying to find some that are... I chose my favorites to go into this collection, and those are all hanging up on my wall. So my less favorite ones are what I have left to show you. So this one is flowing, and I was playing with transparency on this one in the sleeves and at the bottom of the dress. And I've actually learned a little bit more about transparency since I've done this sketch, and I will be doing more sketches in the future, you know, as I keep working on different collections. And I'm excited to try out those different skills. So I've been watching a lot of tutorials by Zoe Hong. She's a fashion designer and a YouTuber who focuses on fashion, and her focus within the fashion world is fashion sketching and fashion illustration and how to render certain fabrics, and it's been such a wonderful resource for me to learn how different fabrics are best rendered. You know, I got a lot of my sketching skills from going to art school, as well as just practicing. But I really was struggling with how to render certain fabrics. So her tutorials have been wonderful. I plan on doing a lot more sketching and practicing. I will say that Inktober was a really, really helpful tool for me because it got me sketching every single day. And even the days that I didn't really feel like sketching, I would always do that sketch the next day. So I did finish all 31, and I got better at sketching, I learned a lot, and I look forward to doing it next October as well. This one's a silly one. This one was Bottle, and I kind of had the inspiration of Alice in Wonderland, the Drink Me. bottles. So here's kind of a avant-garde look in the bottle. Yeah, so that was a big part of October. Um, I finished a sweater this year, knitting-wise, so let me pull that up. I forgot it over here. This has been on my needles, and you've probably seen seen this in the podcast before, but it's been on the needles forever. This is my Anzula Haiku sweater. It's in two different colors, Olivia and Kale, and I did a honeycomb cable pattern up the center and then up around a shawl collar. And this is seriously, it's so nice. It's a lightweight sweater, but it's quite warm. It's a bamboo merino blend. And if you do get a chance to check out Anzula yarns, they are fantastic. They just celebrated an anniversary recently and an opening of their new factory or dye studio. Factory, I guess, is the best way to put it. They dye yarn and fiber there, and they're just some of my favorite people in the fiber industry. So check them out. Again, that was Anzula Haiku in the Olivia and Kale colorways. I haven't done much other knitting that hasn't been like a small shawl or a hat recently, so um, I have I've wound on yarn for a colorwork hat for both my wife and I. I'm going to make not really matching hats, but they're both going to be colorwork. I'm going to do one that is a more traditional Norwegian style of knitting, since that is my heritage, and I'm really excited to get into my first colorwork project, and why not make it something that belongs to my heritage. Um, I've been crocheting a little bit more on the bus. I've been taking the bus quite a bit to work. I'm lucky that the bus actually picks up pretty close to my house, and it's about 25 minutes, 15 to 25 minutes, depending on traffic. So I get a lot of knitting, crochet, or weaving time um, in the mornings and afternoons. So I've also been weaving a ton. I have a few pieces that are, well, one piece that's going into the next issue of Little Looms next year. I did some work for Longmont Yarn Shop that I still need to write up. Sorry, Gail, it's coming. And then I've been doing a ton of weaving for the Shacked blog and e-news. I'm now doing a little bit more weaving for myself and for my business, and I have been loving every minute of it. It's so much fun. I have a 14-yard warp on my baby wolf right now, and I have woven 3 scarves. I plan on starting to weave a 4th scarf tonight, once I get finished working on this and editing it and getting it up on YouTube. And yeah, it's just been a lot of fun. I also have a couple of small mini projects that will go up on the Shacked website soon in December. I have come up with another cute little Zoom loom pattern that I've been dying to work on. So I might do that tonight too. I don't know. I have limited time and a lot of ideas and projects, so we'll see what I get to. Yeah, so before I get on to the Ask Me Anything portion of this podcast, which I did promise on Instagram that I would answer questions if they posted them in my stories, which I will get to. However, I want to know what my viewers would like to see on this channel. Are there bits and pieces of design that you are interested in? So whether it be fashion design or sewing, weaving, knitting, crochet, just let me know what you would like to see on this channel. It will be mostly fiber arts, but really textile arts is what I would like to call it, because I may dabble into more things. I did some embroidery this year. I hope to do some punch needle stuff this year. I would like to do some freeform embroidery with an embroidery machine this year, or I guess into 2019. So there's just going to be a lot of different content back on this channel. Yeah, so let me know in the comments below, what would you like to see? So without further ado, I'm going to answer the questions that came in on my Instagram feed. the last 24 hours, if you will. Let's see what people asked. Okay. So from KG Knitter, Benjamin, just curious, what do you do when not knitting? Work, play, what? So knitting actually takes up very little of my time throughout the week, and most of my time is at work. I spend 40 hours a week at Shack Spindle Company doing all the content management there. And when I'm not doing that, I'm either cooking here. I love cooking for my wife and I. Um, she teaches voice and piano and tends to work in the evenings, so I get to cook dinner, and I spend time with her. I spend time with my two cats. We also are kind of a video game house, so we will frequently play video games with friends or with each other, and if I'm not doing that, then you can probably find me weaving or reading. Um, I have a lot of interests, so but generally I'm doing something hand handworky, if you will. um, and then OO Baguette, which I love that username. Have you ever experienced any kind of bullying for being a male textile artist? This is kind of It's a little bit of a funny question because just about 3 weeks ago or 2.5 weeks ago, I got a pretty nasty comment on my YouTube channel saying that men shouldn't crochet and that I should find myself a man cave and do something more manly. Um, and it used to bug me. I used to have I had very vocal opinions about masculinity. That was something that I was looking into when I was in art school, about societal views on masculinity and how things like fiber arts are frowned upon in a you don't see a lot of men doing it because of toxic masculinity and the fact that men are not taught these handwork skills, even though historically a lot of men did these things. So I can't say that I've ever been bullied, say, like nobody has ever laughed and pointed at me. When I knit on the bus, I do get a lot of looks. I've never been bullied on the bus about it. People usually just find it weird or interesting. I've had a few conversations with people about it, and I actually met a dude at the bus stop who he and his wife go to a knitting group at a local coffee shop in the evening. So, there are other guys who do it. Um, I've never gotten any crap about being a weaver and a guy. I've never gotten any weird looks about being a spinner and a guy. It's mostly been about knitting and crochet, which I find very, very fascinating that those two tend to get more comments than others. However, I will say that I am in a very, very loving and compassionate industry, and I have never gotten any problems with other people within the industry. And actually, generally, I have found that I've become almost a unicorn in our industry, where if I go to TNNA, which is the National Needle Arts Association trade show, I'm usually part of the 1 to 2% of men who are at those shows. And more frequently than not, the men are vendors, they're manufacturers. Some designers exist. I can count on 4 hands the number of male designers that I know in the industry, and I could probably not count at all on any of my hands the number of female designers that I know in our industry. Um, my it's interesting at Shack Spindle Company that the office is almost an even split between men and women. In the factory, it's also almost an even split between men and women. There's a slight division of labor where men tend to be back in manufacturing or production, and the women tend to be in assembly. But that's just based off of proclivities that they prefer to work certain ways. It's not anything to do with how people structure it. Like, we did not say, okay, you can only work here. And actually manufacturing, I believe nowadays, um, it's almost an even split between men and women, which is great. You know, it's great, and we're in an industry where people can celebrate that. Um, yeah, so I do get a lot of comments on YouTube where people are like, "You're a guy, you can't crochet," and it's just they make me laugh now, because I've been doing this for 8 years on YouTube, and a lot of these videos are at least 5 to 6 years old, so it's like they're commenting on really old content, and I'm like, okay, my man cave is more of a yarn cave, and it is filled with fabric and yarn, so whatever. Anyways, so to answer your question, on a grand scheme of things, I've never been bullied about, being a male fiber artist or textile artist. However, I have gotten comments that maybe could skew towards the bullying side, but have never been super, super awful. From Kermit Von Frog 12, first of all, hi. I am so sad that I missed you last November when I was in Phoenix. And also, you guys also have not done a podcast in probably over 2 years, and I miss you. I miss Sam and Kim. Um, but that's okay. I understand that it's hard to do this every now and again. Sorry, there's a cat attacking my back. Um, Anywho, she asks, when are you gonna get another tattoo piece? And I do not have an answer for you because well, A, my pocketbook is saying, no, you can't do a tattoo right now. And I don't have any grand ideas for one. I think my next one would be on my left arm. It's bare skin. I have 4 tattoos. This one's on my other arm. I have a chest tattoo that I can barely reach right now. And actually, so Kermit Von Frog, or Sam, her husband Dub, did my chest piece. So I flew out to Phoenix last year to sit for a couple of sessions, 2 days in a row, which I am glad I did, but I also regretted it at the time because 7 hours, 4 hours one day, 3 hours the next day on a chest piece that covers, big bulk of my chest, that was a lot to handle. I am pretty good at handling pain, but that was like right right on the cusp of the limits that I had for pain tolerance. I survived. Um, and I'm glad that the plane ride back, you only have a belly strap. You don't have a chest strap. You just get to be comfortable with saran wrap on your chest and goo, holding it in place. So to answer your question, I don't know when I'll be getting my next tattoo. Um, Probably in the next couple of years, I guess. I kind of have a pattern of every 5 years, but there was only about a year and a half difference between my chest tattoo and my arm tattoo. So, and also, anybody, let me know if you want me to do a tattoo tour. I know that's something that some people do, but just let me know in the comments below whether or not that's something that interests you. I do have 4 tattoos. I've been getting tattooed since I was 17, so just over 12 years. Yeah, so, yeah. Um, I don't know how to say this name. Um, I look you, I guess, asked, have you ever used pickup sticks on a loom 20 inches or smaller? So this is a weaving question. And to answer your question, I frequently use pickup sticks on my 15-inch Cricut loom and frequently on warps that are less than 10 inches wide. So I teach a class called Texture and Lace. It's a rigid heddle class that I last taught it at Longmont Yarn Shop this summer, and both texture and lace, it's pretty much all pickup stick and hand manipulated techniques. So I love using a pickup stick on a loom that's 20 inches or less. I don't use it on my floor loom because I have 8 shafts, so I don't need a pickup stick for those kinds of patterns. But it is possible, and I do use it. And the final question I have is from Oregon Lark. And the question is, do you use a trapeze to wind on? So this is another weaving question. I don't. I don't use a trapeze. So my method is to use a warping board to measure out my warp. And then I wind on front to back. Yes, front to back. So I'll lash my warp onto the front of my loom, and then I'll pass it through the reed, and I'll pass all of my threads through the heddles, and then I'll tie on to the back and wind on. Usually the most I ever do is a 14-yard warp, and I don't, it's only a 26-inch weaving width, and right now I'm only doing 10 inches wide, so I don't really feel the need for a trapeze. However, a lot of folks love a trapeze. It's an add-on to your loom that basically you pass your warp over a really tall beam and then you weight it. And what that does, that helps keeps your warp under even tension as you wind on. I don't generally have that problem so much, but if I were doing more and more weaving, I might think about doing that in the future. So those were the 5 questions. I'm going to just double check one last time. And I have no more questions. So please let me know what you think about what you would like to see in future episodes. I am so glad to be back. I hope to do this every few weeks. I might start a Patreon to make it even more frequent, but I do have to offset, like the time that's taking me to do this right now is taking me away from other things that actually make me money, potentially. I hate to say those sorts of things, but I'm trying to live. So again, please follow me on Instagram and on Facebook. It's Benjamin Krudwig on Instagram and Facebook for my fiber arts. And then it's Benjamin Collin, BenjaminCollyn, over on my fashion stuff on both Facebook and on Instagram. So I will see you all later. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.